Hi YouTube, my name is Jessie or Jessieology if you follow me on Twitch or on my channel. And this is my third video out of my 30 videos before I turn 30 series, where I'm basically doing all the things that I was scared to do before I turn 30, which I have about 6 months left in my goal timeline. And I also wanted to include these videos where I'm just talking about lessons that I've learned within my 20s that I hope can somehow bring light to other people, or you guys can find relatable, or hopefully use on your own journey. But I've talked about this kind of in my first video, but this video is really about not feeling enough. And I've said this before where I've struggled with feeling not good enough, or not feeling like people will like me or good enough for people to watch my videos or even be my friend, etc. But this is really about not being enough to fit into different categories or boxes that society has definitely put pressure on me for, and probably puts pressure on you for as well. And I think it stems from two places. One, where it's really from my career or choices that I've made, where I've always wanted to try different things. Like I've always hopped from hobby to hobby to career, and I've really embraced the whole jack of all trades, master of none kind of thing, where I felt like I always wanted to have a new experience rather than just sticking with one thing and being a master of that. And I think there's a difference, obviously, between like quitting and giving up and actually just trying new things. But I think that's where kind of this never enough feeling comes from. But then also something that's just ingrained in me, who I am. And if you don't know this already, I'm half Korean and half a mix of things, but I'm half Lithuanian, Slovenian, and Irish. So that's my one half, and then the other half is Korean. And I've always been kind of at this middle ground of two cultures, and I've always felt very in the center of those two things. So it's between not having a straightforward career path or hobby path even, and then also not having like a straightforward cultural path as well. That's always made me feel a little bit on the outskirts. And now that I am in my 30s and really digging into my identity and who I am and working through the identity crisis that I've had, I just really feel like now I'm understanding why I felt that way, and also understanding the fears behind it. And I think it's all come down to the rejection I've faced throughout the years for literally just who I am. So growing up half Korean and half white, I really enjoyed being a mix of two cultures. And I think my mom really did an amazing job of sharing bits and pieces of the Korean culture with me in such a loving, encouraging way. And she's very Americanized. She moved to the US at a really young age, and she grew up in the 70s and 80s in the Midwest. And I feel like she was kind of one of the pioneers of the Korean American culture. So she's very Americanized, and I think she really shared her love for her Korean side through food. So I have a huge love for Korean food. And I think it really opened up the door for me to feel super curious about that side of my background. Whereas for her, I'm sure, and I've spoken to my friends about this as well, when they initially moved to the US, they felt a lot of rejection, and they faced a lot of bullying and resistance from people around them just for being different. But for me, it was more of wanting to understand a piece of where I come from, and that was my Korean culture. Whereas like I also was interested in my other cultures as well, but I felt easily connected to that on my American side. So I had a little bit of help from my grandparents. Obviously, they speak English, so I felt like they could share a lot with me as well. But I taught myself how to read Korean and speak a little bit as much as I could. And then in high school, I met some Korean friends who had just moved to the US or were international students, and they really got me up to speed on all the K-dramas and all the K-pop, and I'm talking like the good K-pop from the late 2000s, early 2010s, like Big Bang, SNSD, like the OGs. And I really loved that part of myself. And also in high school, I was doing so many different things as well. Like I tried 6 different sports. I was a varsity track athlete and an art kid. I had friends in every friend group. I never had a friend group. I was always that one who had like one-on-one time with a bunch of people from different friend groups. So in that way too, I never felt like I fit into a true category or true box. The other part of me too, I guess, really loved that I wasn't fitting into a category. But it wasn't until I went to college that I started to actually experience that not enough feeling. And there's one story that really sticks out to me, that I truly felt that I wasn't good enough, or I wasn't one or the other enough. And this was when it was club day at college, and you know how they have all the tables set up and you can go around, sign up for different clubs and at least just get information on them. And there was a Korean student association, and I remember going up to the table and hearing about them through other students that they had amazing like food events. And obviously I love Korean food, so I thought that would be such a fun club to get involved in. And I went up to the table, and the girl sitting there, I will always remember her face when she looked at me. It was definitely not a happy face. And she asked me the question, "Are you even Korean?" And my knee-jerk reaction was very defensive, and I got kind of angry, and I said, "Obviously I am," but it was too late. She already kind of triggered something in me that started these doubts that started coming up for me. And so those doubts started swirling, and I did spend a lot more time with my Korean friends on campus. I felt like I had to really like lean into the culture to prove that I was worthy of it in a way. So I spent a lot more time with my Korean friends, but I always felt there was like something there that wasn't fully clicking. And there were moments in our relationship where people would choose which side of me they wanted to be. Like if they made a non-politically correct joke about one race, they would make me the other one, vice versa. Whichever one was more convenient for them, that's the race that I was at the time. And sometimes they would say things and be like, "You wouldn't understand, your dad is white." And it was hurtful because, one, it took away my ability to empathize, or they just assumed that I wouldn't empathize with their situation. But also it made me feel ashamed of where I came from, and also very just honestly rejected. So even though I was trying to lean into one side more than the other, no matter how much I did that, it didn't change who I was, and it didn't change their attitudes towards me. And I realized they were just trying to fit me into one box where I am not, I just like don't fit into the boxes, the societal categories that most people have. And I've spent so many years trying to fit into a box only to realize like I'm just not a box girl. I've had so many different careers that no one can put me into one category. I can be a designer one day, a gamer another, and a photographer on Friday if I wanted to be. And I think it's really funny because I've always had these very polarizing, I guess like juxtapositions in my life where I'm half white, half Korean. I lived in Chicago, lived in Colorado. Right now, the funniest one to me is that I sell high-end jewelry as my 9-to-5, but then like my other side is that I'm a streamer and I play video games, and I just like love all things nerd, which is totally different than what I do during the day. And I'll probably make more videos on this later because I've really been trying to embrace also my inner child, which is why I probably feel so connected to the gaming hobby loving, hobby changing self, letting go of fitting into a category, that I really started to understand who I was. And I finally also realized, like, this really big lesson that you're the only one who can give yourself full acceptance, because you're the only one who really knows yourself in its fullest, in the most full way that you possibly can. No one will ever be in your head, and no one will understand you to the extent that you do. And even saying that, it takes time to even understand yourself. I've started standing up for the decisions I've made, and that I don't fit into the society categories that people want me to fit in. And so if anything, I want this video to be not only a memory of the story that I've lived out, but also one that reminds you that it's okay to be interested in many things, and it's okay to be half and half. It's okay to be bits and pieces of the whole, and it's okay to chase what you're interested in, whether that's rock climbing or knitting or, I don't know, making things out of clay. I think that you are good enough to fit into your very own category and not the one society wants to fit you into. Be an unknown and confuse the heck out of the people who make the rules. And I hope you get to spend your life figuring out who you are, and it's one of the best relationships you can ever cultivate. Thank you so much for watching my video. I will have more coming up in the coming weeks, just sharing thoughts from my 20s, and hopefully you guys can relate. I appreciate y'all watching, and I'll see you soon.